criminal who crosses the line could find themselves.
Y'all ever be feeling like you just can't die? You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all ever feel like the key to just not dying is just to, like, persevere? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if I'm dying, I could really just, like be alive. Like, let's say you suffocate, right? You better pass out. Just, like, stay awake long enough to get some air. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you about to, let's say you drowning, ain't nothing you can do about that one, buddy. I'm sorry. That's probably oh my god, that's like my scariest way to die.
Facing the gallows or the headsman at any point throughout history, although crossing the line could mean anything from murder to just annoying the king. However, in many places, the death penalty isn't the worst thing that the courts have to offer. Here are 15 of the evil punishments worse than death administered throughout history. Number 15, flaying. Let's turn the clock back to...
I feel like that's beating. I feel like it's like getting whipped to death.
Ancient Assyria, roughly 850 BCE. The ruler Ashur-nasir-pal II was known for his brutal treatment of captives and rebel leaders, but one method created a special dread for victims. Using a special set of knives, the torturers would slowly remove the unfortunate victim's skin, and this was something they practiced.
Ah, Jesus! You just get skinned to death? Oh my, that's way worse than getting whipped. I didn't know it was gonna get this bad. I didn't know. This number 15? We starting off like, oh my god. We start off like this at number 15? I don't know how it gets worse than that. You getting skinned to death. All your skin coming off. That's crazy.
A lot. They not only knew how to remove the skin smoothly, but how to keep the victim alive for as long as possible. To ensure this, they'd start the cutting at the lower legs, thighs, and the buttocks.
That's gay. They cutting booty. They cutting man booty. Because, you know, they not doing this to no girl. Maybe they would do it to a girl. They probably keep the titty.
Areas without proximity to vital organs, making it more likely the victim would remain in agonizing pain for longer without bleeding out. This was a highly effective form of torture, and if the torturers wanted information, they were likely to get it quickly. A victim who gave their captives what they wanted could survive the beginning stages of flaying.
I know people who always say, oh, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Would you, if you had, let's say you had an enemy, right? And this was the only way you could possibly have him killed, right? This is somebody who did something heinous to you. Somebody you just have so much hate for. Would you be comfortable with them dying like this? Like, if you could press a button that says you will get them skinned alive, and there'll be no trace back to you, and you'll never even hear about it. You won't even know that it happened. Like, the only reason you know that it happened is because you hit the button, but you won't hear about it on the news. This will never come back to haunt you. Would you hit the button? Because I feel like me, bro, I could never, bro. Like, this is number 15. I'm already feeling like that. I wonder what number 1's gonna be, but I couldn't do that.
Instead of torturing religious heretics in empires for more than 1,000 years, and while using it on a human today,
imagine saying, "Hey, yo, I don't believe in a big man in the sky who created everything, and then now you're skin God. Now you don't got no skin. Your skin is hanging in a closet at somebody else's house. Your skin is in the king's house, bro. You're somewhere in the ditch, but your skin is somewhere else. Because you said, oh, I don't believe in God. That's crazy to me. No, I believe in God. And even if I didn't, guess what? I still believe in God. Because I ain't getting skinned alive just for voicing that opinion. That's crazy.
Frowned up. Number 14, the boats. Flaying usually kills people after a short period of intense torture, but other methods keep the pain going for a lot longer. When a soldier named Mithridates murdered the brother of the king wanted him to suffer. Sure, the king's brother had been attempting a coup, but it didn't matter. He ordered the soldier to be taken to the boats. This wasn't exile, it was something much worse. The condemned could be taken to a pair of boats, with one lying on top of the other. Holes would then be cut in the boat for the victim's head, hands, and feet. So he would be trapped inside. But then the real torture begins, and it starts with dessert? The condemned man is force-fed a mixture of milk and honey, pumping him full of the sweet mixture until he's nearly to the point of nausea, and left in the sun with the sticky substance drying all over his...
That's so sus, bro. Left in the sun with the sticky substance drying all over his body. That's gay.
Face and body. And from there, nature takes its course. The sweet mixture starts attracting insects, who land on the man's body and begin sucking it off of him, creating a constant feeling of irritation. Joining the flies will be bees and wasps, which will be painfully stinging him. And inside the boat, the man's bloated body will release excrement, which will attract worms and other vermin. Inside the darkened boat, they'll start biting at his body and eventually burrowing in, leading him to die a slow, painful death from his body being consumed by vermin. This technique seems to have only been used in Persia, although it horrified the Greco-Roman historian Plutarch so much that he made a special mention of it in his biography of the
That would horrify anybody.
Was this just one madman's creation, or was this a common fate for criminals and traitors in Persia?
I swear, bro. There's no way people really out here dying like that.
Number 13, Poena Coulée. Roman law was one of the most advanced systems of law the world had ever seen at the time. And that also meant the judges could get a little more creative. When a judge had a suspect in front of him who had been convicted of killing his father, he decided he deserved more than just a simple execution. And there would have been some surprising supporting characters in the mix. First, the convict would have been severely whipped, and his head would have been covered in a sack, at which point he would have been sewn up into a large leather sack. But he wouldn't be the only one in the sack. He would be joined by a collection of live animals, none of them friendly. At which point the whole
you put a
thrown into the water to drown, with the idea that
if you ever put a monkey in a bag with a person, bro, that's probably already number 2. Just monkey. Did y'all see that girl who got her her skin, her face, and everything ripped off by the monkey? I'm not gonna show. I'll say pull up. That's wild. I'm not gonna pull up. It was one chimpanzee that was slightly irritated and just went off, ripped her skin off, and took her eye. Like, yo, monkeys are no joke, but I'm never messing with no monkey.
Number 12, Crucifixion. It's one of the most famous.
Jesus. I know that one. I know that. Wait, does that kill you?
Famous images in religious history. The Christian Messiah Jesus being nailed to a cross for angering the Roman authorities. But while it's mostly associated with religious martyrdom now, it was a common Roman execution method. So common that religious texts refer to thieves and other criminals sentenced for hanging alongside Jesus. And whether you were a rebel rabbi or a common thief, there were few worse ways to die. It served not just as a slow death, but as a warning to others. The crosses were placed in a public square, and the condemned were frequently jeered and tormented by onlookers as they died a slow death. But unlike many of the other methods...
How did he die? Wasn't don't they just starve to death or something? Like, is it fatigue that kills you? Starvation or dehydration? Is that what kills you? Not the actual, being on a cross. I feel like it's the same as being left in a dungeon or something. That is horrible to die. You just sit there starved to death. Oh man.
Methods in the list.
I'll be mad when I'm hungry
regularly. A fatal injury. It just set them up to die from other factors like blood loss and asphyxiation. And the torture started early. The ritual would start with the condemned being forced to bear the heavy wooden cross on their back, often while being whipped. After the cross was placed, they would be nailed to it through their wrists and hung from it. Sometimes the feet would be nailed as well, although evidence isn't consistent. With their arms splayed out to the side, they would be left to hang for anywhere from hours to days. Because their whole body weight was held by their arms, the typical cause of death would be trouble breathing due to the pressure on the lungs. Number 11, Immurement. Sometimes the most horrible thing to do to someone is to do nothing. One of the most ancient methods of torture was to take a convict and wall them in alive somewhere and then just walk away. Out of sight, out of mind for those dealing out the punishment. But for the condemned, they're left alone, in the dark, with nothing but their mind to keep them company as they slowly die a painful death due to either dehydration or asphyxiation.
What is it? I keep hearing wow, I'm slow. The state of person is being deprived of oxygen, but how? You're just in a room. I saw the bars. There's gaps in the brick.
If the condemned is buried alive in a coffin, as has happened accidentally to people wrongly declared dead, they'll likely be dead within hours from a lack of air. But
how do you I thought you take out the organs. I thought the morgue did the tests and everything. How does that happen? How do you get wrongly accused of being dead? What? This must be that medieval stuff, bro, because ain't no way.
They're kept at number 12. The breaking wheel. Europe loved its public executions, with everyone from murderers to hair.
I feel like the breaking wheel, I've heard of it. The breaking wheel. I'm gonna let them explain. I definitely know what it is, but I'm gonna let them explain.
To common thieves facing their turn at some point. But for those deemed truly loathsome, a worse fate than the gallows awaited them. No one knows when the breaking wheel was first created, but the first references to the torture
device is not what I was about to say
from the 6th century. The condemned would be taken to a public stage and tied to the floor, at which point the giant spoked wheel would be rolled in. The goal of this first stage of the execution was to exact extreme pain, starting with breaking the legs of the convict by dropping the wheel on their shins. Sometimes this would be followed up by killing the inmate by dropping the wheel on their neck, but this wasn't common. because the public demanded more
What if
blood
you
than
hit
that.
his
In
neck
most
and
cases,
then, like,
before
but you kind of weak, so you don't throw it down with enough force. You just drop it. It's a heavy wheel, so it breaks his neck, but he's not dead. Like, he's just sitting there, gasping for air. He can breathe, but he just got his neck broken. Oh my goodness.
And the inmate was either left to die, beheaded, or lit on fire. The body was often left up for display on the wheel as scavengers had their way, making this resemble crucifixion in many ways. However, there was always a way out. If the convict fell off the wheel while still alive or survived the execution, they were deemed to be spared by God. Their injuries were treated, they were typically pardoned of their crimes, and were in a rare position of being one of the only people to survive one of the worst punishments in human history.
That don't even make sense to me. You telling me I gotta fall off the wheel after I done broke every bone in my body? I have to survive getting my head chopped off, and y'all just gonna treat it? This is the Dark Ages. This is medieval times. They don't have good medicine. Y'all can't just treat my injuries. I'm probably gonna look like that thing from Rick and Morty when they ruin their universe. Those things, a Cronenberg. I'm gonna look like a Cronenberg for the rest of my life now. That's crazy.
The worst punishment often lasted a long time, but few were as disturbing as this one. Number 9. Impalement. How disturbing does a punishment have to be for the man who inspired Dracula to go, yeah, I like that, I'm gonna make it my signature. Despite the association with the infamous Vlad Tepes, the Romanian leader didn't create the punishment of impalement. It had been used since ancient Mesopotamia as a way to punish particularly hated criminals. It was a simple method, but almost unspeakably brutal. A large sharpened stake is taken and inserted up the backside of the unfortunate convict and pushed forward until it emerges through the mouth, almost always causing fatal damage. There are also reports that it was used by the Dutch rulers of the East Indies during the colonial era. Vlad, no doubt, would be proud.
Alright, see him on the bottom right here? Him? He got his legs like that because he accidentally poked his ball sack on the way up. Like he grazed it. A splinter's in his ball sack right now. But he can't say nothing about it. You know, there's blood coming out and all that. That's dead.
Number 8. The rack. Most of the punishments on this list are execution methods that get a little too ambitious with prolonging death. But punishment isn't the only goal of torture. Sometimes the torturers need some information, and the old guard was willing to get a lot more brutal than slapping people with a phone book. Enter the rack. A simple device that looks like an old-fashioned washboard, but this device wasn't used to clean clothes. It was used to create pain. The wooden frame featured a roller at both ends. The victim's hands were tied to the top end, while their legs were attached to the bottom end. As the interrogation advanced, the torturers slowly rolled the rack. Even if one was able to escape the rack, it's unlikely they could walk after it did its work. This also kept the person immobile for future torture, such as using hot coals to burn them. The rack was so feared that sadistic interrogators would often use the rack on one person and force another to. Number 7. Auto de fe. The Spanish Inquisition was one of the most infamous affairs of religious persecution in the world, as the particularly brutal authorities built on the Roman Catholic Church's enforcement of laws. Opposing religion was largely banned. Converts were surveilled and interrogated to ensure they weren't keeping their old faiths. And anyone suspected of heresy was subjected to extreme.
You know, I was at the gym and I came back. I took a little video, I took some pictures, I posted it, and then in the group chat that I'm in with a lot of my friends that I grew up with. One of them, he said in the chat, he said, I look at Paris and Antoine's physique and thank the high heavens for the Second Amendment. One grapple and it's gulag o'clock. I'm like, yo, this is the first time I checked the group chat in a minute. And he's somebody plotting to shoot me? Like, I didn't even do nothing.
Extreme torture under the authority of the infamous Takamata. And for those who confessed, an even worse fate awaited them. They would be subjected to a ritual of public penance where they would be paraded before the public and abused, wearing garments bearing their accused crimes. Then the authorities would proclaim their guilt or innocence. For some, it would be innocence, as they would collapse in gratitude and relief. But for most, it would be guilty, and horrors awaited them. The punishment would typically begin with public whipping and torture, but it would only end one way. The convicted would be tied to a stake, kindling would be piled under them, and they would be lit afire and burned to death while still alive. It was a horrifying way to die, but the only grace of mercy was that many passed out from the intense smoke before they burned to death. This execution technique is typically associated with witch burners, but most of those killed by burning over the centuries, from the 15th to the 19th, were either religious minorities or critics of the dogma and tactics of the Inquisition.
Yeah, I heard that the Salem witch trials.
Despite persistent rumors, no witches, accused or otherwise, were ever burned in Salem. Not all these punishments are famous, but this next one is no less disgusting. Number 6. Schwedentrunk. Ah, the Swedish
They poop in his mouth. I know this one. They dookie and like they put it in his stomach.
drink. It's a simple technique. Force your captives to drink as much as they possibly can until they give you what you want. If you've ever tried to drink a whole gallon of water as a part of a dare, you know this can get very unpleasant
is
very
lame,
quickly
bro.
because your stomach can only handle so much. But this wasn't just drinking water. The Swedish troops would tie the person up and use a funnel to pour the liquid into the person's mouth, and the actual substance would be an unpleasant surprise. Sometimes it would be water, sometimes it would be boiling water, causing terrible internal burns. Sometimes it would just be disgusting, like urine or sewage. In addition to the possible
I knew
poisoning
they made him like put something in his mouth. I didn't know it was. I thought it was poop. I thought they were making him eat poop, which I assumed you died pretty quickly from E. coli, or like the next day from E. coli or something. This is worse. This is worse than what I thought. You couldn't torture me back in the day, because I'll tell you before you even thought of torturing me. The moment you look at me, I'm gonna just assume you try to torture me, get some information on me. I'm gonna tell you everything I know. I'll tell you my cousin's social. So I'll figure it out. If I don't know it, I'll figure it out for you. Because there's no way you about to sit here and torture me like this. I'm not going out like that. You're not ready to put a funnel in my mouth and then force drink me Stuku water? I don't want that. I don't want no urine in my mouth. They got pig swine urine. I don't want that in my mouth. I'm gonna tell you anything I want, anything you want to know. I'll tell you your mom's deepest secret if I need to.
more infection. This could cause the person's stomach. Now let's head across the pond for something that isn't as funny as it sounds. Number 5, tarring and feathering. It almost sounds like a cartoon gag. The unfortunate.
What he say? Is he saying that tarring and feathering sounds funny? This nigga gotta be racist. He gotta be racist. Cause ain't no way you just said that to me. There's no way I just heard that come out your mouth if you're not racist. That's crazy. What?
While this wasn't often the case,
hot
often
tar.
tar poured on the victims was boiling hot. And when it dried and came off, it would take pieces of burned skin with it. There's no report of anyone dying from being tarred and feathered. Many of the victims were left in agonizing pain and had permanent
I guess
burn
these are all
scars.
just ways
The
to
punishment
torture
became
somebody,
rarer
honestly.
after the revolution, but it was hard to keep good
Yeah, 'cause
torture
it was
down.
racist.
The Mormon founder Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered by anti-Mormon radicals in 1832, and a German-American
horrible.
farmer named. Number 3, rat torture. How do you turn
Rat
rats
torture.
into man-eaters? The first reports come from
Not
Roman
beat 'em.
Catholic writers alleging torture in the Tower of London during the Elizabethan era. They claimed that as the tide rose and the River Thames rolled in, rats would climb into the prisoner's cell and viciously attack him. Some doubt this happened since rats typically don't attack humans unprovoked, but the
That's
reports
facts.
might have encouraged
Must have
some
been in New
people
York or
because
Baltimore.
in the 16th century during the Dutch Revolt, someone did manage to weaponize the furry plague vectors. A pottery bowl filled with rats would be placed upside down on a prisoner's body, and hot coals would be placed on top of it. As the bowl heated up, the panicked rats would desperately gnaw at the prisoner's flesh to try to find refuge from the heat. Someone called PETA. It's grotesque, and it worked. Rat torture isn't a particularly common form of torture simply because it depended on living animals doing what you need them to do.
But they
the
did that with
fear
the
that
living
rats
animals last
create
time.
made it an
Put 'em in the
appealing
water.
option for particularly cruel dictators, and it made an appearance in military dictatorships in South America during the 20th century. Sometimes there's nothing more terrifying than nothing.
Is he
Number
butt
one,
naked?
white
Or was I
torture.
just looking at his
Solitary confinement is torture in itself, stripping someone of all
This
their
is number
comforts and
one.
isolating them from any human contact. But usually, they at least have a
Leave 'em
sense
alone.
of space that they can use to orient themselves. White torture strips them of even that by placing them in a cell of nothingness. The
Okay.
prisoners deprived of
This is
color,
what we do with
giving
people
them a
in
cell
psych wards.
where the walls, floor, and ceiling are entirely white.
Yo, this is what we do to people in psych wards, like the padded rooms. So this is say something.
Not only that, their clothing is also white, and any food given to them, usually plain rice or porridge, is white as well. Taking this to the extreme, the cell is equipped with bright neon tubes that prevent any shadows from falling on the cell. And the soundproof cell leaves them with nothing but their own mind. And that mind
Wow.
slowly starts going insane. An extreme form of sensory deprivation, this was reportedly used extensively in Iran against political dissidents who could be held for
Iranian
months or
folks
even
smart.
years in one of these
I don't
cells.
think I
It
would've
also
thought of
showed up
this.
in Venezuela, and international human rights groups even accused the United States of using it on accused terrorists in Guantanamo Bay, using goggles and earmuffs to block out their senses. But in all these cases, the facilities are tightly guarded, meaning all anyone has to go on is the reports of the victims, and those are harrowing, with many claiming the extreme sleep deprivation left them unable to sleep even after they were freed, and haunted them for years afterward. What about the children? Watch worst punishments of children through history. If you want to know
What? We might have to watch this one next, cause that's crazy. Children, not the kids. Not fuck them kids, but like not the kids. I feel like the last one is pretty bad, but I wouldn't say it's worse than, I wouldn't say it's like number one. Like, the definitely the worst. It's terrible, but that's like just mess your psyche up a little bit. I'd rather something happen in my mind. No, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather be like changed mentally than harmed severely physically. You know what I mean? That's crazy though. That's a crazy video.